11:37 p.m. Two people are sitting at a kitchen table that's covered in old coffee mugs and unsent text drafts. They're past fighting. He's staring at a crack in the wall. She's scrolling through messages they'll never send. Both of them are having the same silent thought. Why isn't this working when we clearly love each other? Then something unexpected happens. She feels the urge to ask, "Do you still love me?" But instead, she pauses and notices the ache underneath the question. He feels the urge to say, "What do you want from me?" But instead, he notices the panic in his chest, the old fear of never being enough. And in that quiet moment, something more radical than falling in love happens. They both see it. They don't actually want each other to love them. They want each other to fix them, to finally prove they're worthy, to finally silence the old emptiness they've carried since childhood. And for the first time, they realize no one can do that for them. This is the real turning point in relationship. The moment they stop secretly hoping the other person will complete them. The moment they discover the possibility that they were already whole. Most of what we call love is actually two incomplete people reaching across a void, begging each other to fill it. Make me feel safe. Make me feel desirable. Make me feel enough. And it works for a while. The chemicals flood in. The validation hits. You feel chosen, wanted, high. But underneath, there's that tremor of panic. If you complete me, what happens if you leave? In this video, we're going to explore a different way, where intimacy isn't about clinging, but about freedom, where love isn't a desperate need, but a choice, made moment by moment from a place of already being enough. This isn't about being alone. It's not about detaching or pretending you don't care. It's about what happens when consciousness wakes up to itself in you, and then meets another consciousness doing the same thing. And when that happens, the entire game of relationship changes. Before we can understand conscious relationship, we need to understand the version of relationship almost everyone starts with, the ego-based version, the version built on need, validation, and old survival strategies. Because without seeing this clearly, we can't recognize the shift that comes next. Here's how it happens. Let's start with what most people actually live, not what they post on Instagram. You meet someone. There's spark, chemistry, this subtle sense of finally someone who might understand you. Very quickly, it stops being just attraction. Something old wakes up in your nervous system. Well, it's not just, I like them. It's, maybe this is the one who will fix the part of me that never feels okay. That voice is the ego. The ego isn't a villain. It's a survival strategy that formed when you were small, trying to make sense of a world where love felt conditional and safety felt uncertain. It learned who you had to be accepted, what parts of you were too much and needed to be hidden, what you had to do so you wouldn't be abandoned. Fast forward, that same strategy walks into your adult relationships. Now you're not looking for a partner. You're looking for a solution. You don't want intimacy as much as you want relief. Relief from feeling unworthy. Relief from feeling unseen. So two people meet. She wants him to make her feel safe. He wants her to make him feel powerful. She needs proof she's desirable. He needs proof he's valuable. On the surface, it looks like romance. Underneath, it's an exchange of unconscious needs. For a while, you both play your roles beautifully. You say the right things, send the right texts, mirror each other's wounds, without realizing you're doing it. You're not relating to the real person in front of you. You're relating to the fantasy that they're the one who will finally complete you. That's where the quiet exhaustion comes from, because it's not love you're protecting. It's the contract. I'll keep validating your wounds if you keep validating mine. And when one person steps out of character, gets honest, sets a boundary, stops performing, suddenly there's panic, anger, betrayal, not because they did something terrible, but because they stopped feeding the illusion. This is what most of us are taught to call love. Two drowning people clinging to each other, each hoping the other is land. If this feels uncomfortably familiar, there is nothing wrong with you. This is the default human setting. This is what happens when unconscious beings try to relate using childhood survival strategies. The ego is not evil. It's just built on one core assumption. I am incomplete, and something outside me has to fix that. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if you've been whole the entire time and just forgot? There's a moment where something inside you simply stops chasing, stops trying to solve itself through someone else. It's the moment you notice the awareness listening to these words right now, not your emotional reactions. The awareness underneath all of it. That awareness has been with you from the beginning, before the personality formed its careful armor. And here's the key. That awareness never needed another person to complete it. When you feel this, not as a philosophy, but as a lived experience, something fundamental relaxes. The whole architecture of, I need someone to make me okay, loses its foundation. This is awakening. From this recognition, relationship transforms. You are no longer entering connection to get something. You're entering to give something. Your presence, your curiosity, your genuine self. This is where conscious relationship begins. Two people who don't need each other to be whole, and therefore can finally see each other clearly. You can choose a relationship instead of clinging to it. You can feel deeply, more deeply, because you're grounded. You're not afraid of being overwhelmed or abandoned. Wholeness doesn't make you distant. It makes you safe enough to open all the way. Safe enough to love without the fear of losing yourself. Safe enough to stay when it's real and leave when it's not. This is freedom, the freedom to choose love rather than grasp for it. Let's look at how this plays out in real time, because the difference shows up in the smallest moments. In unconscious relationship, drama is inevitable. He says something neutral. She hears it through an old wound. She reacts with fear. He reacts to her fear with defensiveness. Now they're not even discussing the original comment. They're fighting about the feeling of fighting. Drama is what happens when two egos touch each other's unhealed edges, and neither knows how to pause. In this state, everything becomes a threat. This is why unconscious relationships feel so exhausting. You're not arguing with the other person. You're arguing with 20 years of their history, and they're arguing with 20 years of yours. And most people think this is just how relationships are. But drama only exists when you're relating from incompleteness. Now here's the shift. In conscious relationship, that urgency dissolves. Because the deeper story, the story that says, my worth depends on you, is no longer running the show. You feel the old pattern wanting to activate, but it doesn't have the same power. The sensation moves through your body instead of hijacking it. You respond slowly, honestly, instead of reacting. She expresses a need. You just hear her. No defense, just presence. Space is no longer scary. Two people can have separate inner worlds without threatening the connection. In unconscious relationship, you cling because any distance feels like danger. In conscious relationship, you don't cling because you trust the connection more than you fear the space. Paradoxically, the more room you give each other, the closer you become. The energy between you gets lighter. Love becomes something that expands, not something you have to manage. This is the difference. Drama is what happens when two egos collide. Spacious intimacy is what happens when two whole beings meet. The first thing you notice in conscious relationship isn't more talking. It's less. When you're grounded in yourself, silence stops feeling like a gap you need to fix. It becomes a shared space, alive, comfortable. And when you do speak, the quality is totally different. You're not strategizing your sentences to avoid conflict or engineer a reaction. You're not beautifying the truth to make yourself likable. You're not speaking from performance. You're speaking from the body. Simple, clean sentences. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I need a little time alone. Something tightened in me when you said that. No blame. No subtle manipulation. Just direct experience. And the other person doesn't receive these as attacks because they're not listening through the filters of old wounds. They're just hearing you. This kind of listening is rare. It makes you feel more seen than 1,000 compliments ever could. This is conscious communication. Truth without the sharp edges of fear. And then there's something people don't talk about enough. The humor. Awakened relationships have a humor that doesn't show up in unconscious ones. Not sarcasm. It's the humor of recognition. The cosmic joke of watching the ego almost hijack a moment and catching it mid-flight. She starts getting triggered, then suddenly pauses. Oh my God. I was about to tell myself a whole story about you not loving me. And instead of spiraling into arguments, you both laugh. Not to dismiss the feeling, but because you can see the old pattern so clearly, you can't take it seriously anymore. The ego can't survive being laughed at with kindness. It needs you to believe its catastrophes. Awareness dissolves it. And then, there's the presence that moves through everything, especially the body language. The way awakened beings make eye contact is different. It's like looking past a person's personality and meeting the awareness behind their eyes. Sometimes no words are spoken at all, because the communication is happening on a different level. Two nervous systems syncing. Two forms sharing one awareness. Communication becomes less about transmitting information and more about transmitting presence. When you strip away the performance, the anxiety, the need to be right, the need to manage perception, what's left is clean, warm, unguarded connection. You don't talk to connect. You're connected, so you talk. And sometimes you don't need to talk at all. Most spiritual teachings either tiptoe around physical intimacy or turn it into something abstract. But in awakened relationship, the body is not a distraction from presence. It's one of its most powerful expressions. In unconscious relationship, sex often becomes a transaction. Prove you want me. Make me feel desirable. Show me I'm enough. Even when the chemistry is real, the underlying current is performance, pressure, and silent fear. You're in your head. How do I look? Am I doing this right? What are they thinking? You're managing the experience instead of inhabiting it. The body is present, but you aren't. And afterward, there's often a subtle emptiness, a faint emotional hangover. Not because anything was wrong, but because your nervous system knows when intimacy has been used as a strategy rather than shared as an expression. Conscious intimacy is the opposite. Everything slows down because neither of you is chasing anything. There's no agenda, just two bodies meeting in full awareness. Touch lands differently when you're actually inside your own body. Breath becomes communication. Sensation becomes its own language. You're not trying to make anything happen. You're feeling what's already happening. This presence turns physical intimacy into something deeper than technique or passion, a meditation in motion. And the vulnerability here isn't just about nakedness. It's about letting yourself be fully felt without the armor of fantasy, without the mask of confidence, without the mental choreography. When both people are awake, something alchemical happens. The boundary between my experience and your experience softens. You're not using each other to get high. You're allowing the moment to rise and fall on its own. You can be wild without fear, playful without insecurity, still without awkwardness, all because you're not performing. You're participating. And when the physical connection completes, there's no emotional crash. Conscious intimacy isn't about sex at all. It's about letting awareness express itself through touch, sensation, and connection. It's about remembering through the most human act that you were never separate to begin with. Everyone wants to know what happens when things get hard, because that's where most spiritual relationships fall apart. They sound enlightened until there's an actual disagreement. Here's the truth. Awakening does not erase differences. It just changes the way you meet them. In unconscious relationship, conflict feels like a threat to survival. A disagreement becomes, you don't love me. You're abandoning me. I'm not enough. So you defend, attack, shut down, withdraw, or manipulate. The fight is never about the dishes or the plans or the tone of a sentence. It's about trying to secure safety. But in conscious relationship, conflict is weather, not catastrophe. You feel the activation, tight chest, quick breath, old fear rising. But you don't mistake it for truth. You don't turn it into a story of doom. You stay with your own experience long enough to name it, to stay grounded in what's real instead of what's reactive. And the other person does the same. Two people staying present with their own reactions creates a kind of emotional spaciousness where connection doesn't break when friction arises. You can disagree completely and still feel connected. There's no urgency to win because the relationship isn't built on need. It's built on presence. From this place, solutions often emerge without force. When neither person is clinging to being right, new possibilities appear. Sometimes you meet in the middle. Sometimes you honor differences. And sometimes the truth is bigger than the moment. You realize your paths are diverging. Even then, the space remains clear. There's sadness, yes. There's grief, yes. But there's no punishment. No villain. You're not losing each other. You're honoring what's true for both of you. This is the heart of non-attachment. You don't hold the relationship hostage to your fear. You let the relationship evolve or complete without forcing it into a shape that no longer fits. And when two people choose to stay together from that openness, the commitment is deeper than any vow rooted in fear. This is what makes conscious conflict so powerful. The connection isn't threatened by the truth. The truth is what strengthens the connection. Awakened relationships aren't a non-stop highlight reel. They're profoundly, beautifully ordinary. Ordinary in the sense of real. You still do dishes. You still get annoyed when the trash doesn't get taken out. The difference is how you inhabit the ordinary. When presence is alive in you, simple moments take on a quiet luminosity. Breakfast becomes a ceremony without trying to be one. The sound of the knife on the cutting board, the warmth of the sunlight, the comfortable silence between you. There's nothing dramatic happening. And yet, something in you recognizes, this is it. This is enough. The ego can't grasp this. It wants peak experiences, emotional intensity, something grand to confirm this is special. But presence reveals that the deepest intimacy lives in the unremarkable. The magic isn't in what you're doing. It's in how fully you're there while doing it. This is the sacred ordinariness of conscious relationship. You're just awake to the moment, and the moment reveals its own depth. And emotions flow through this simplicity with an ease that's impossible in unconscious relationship. In ego-based love, emotions get tangled in narrative. Sadness becomes a story about abandonment. Anger becomes a story about betrayal. Anxiety becomes a story about the future falling apart. The feeling isn't allowed to just be a feeling. It becomes an identity, a crisis, a judgment. But in conscious relationship, emotions move like weather. They come, they intensify, they pass, a wave of sadness might arise. She cries, you sit with her, not trying to fix anything. She's not collapsing into meaning making. She's just feeling. 10 minutes later, the tears soften. There's rest. Maybe laughter. Maybe a conversation about dinner plans. No story had to be built. No emotional state needed to define the relationship. This is emotional fluidity. It's the freedom to feel everything without making the feelings dangerous. And when both people allow this kind of emotional honesty, intimacy deepens effortlessly. You're not trying to keep the good emotions and avoid the bad ones. You're letting life move through you fully. And in that permission, something profound happens. Your partner sees you, the real one, and loving you becomes easier. This is what makes awakened relationships feel alive. They include everything, the laughter, the tears, without turning any of it into a problem to solve. Nothing is excluded. Everything is allowed. And the ordinary itself becomes holy, simply because you're fully present in it. Up to this point, it might seem like conscious relationship is about better communication, less drama, deeper intimacy, but that's just the surface. The deeper purpose is far more mysterious. Relationship becomes a mirror in which consciousness recognizes itself. You could awaken alone. You could meditate on a mountaintop, dissolve your ego, and rest in pure awareness. People have done it for thousands of years, but something happens in relationship that simply cannot happen in solitude. When you sit across from another awakened being, someone who's not relating from wound or projection, you're not just seeing them, you're seeing your own awareness staring back at you. Not metaphorically, literally. It's the moment you realize the consciousness behind your eyes is the same consciousness behind mine. We are two expressions of one being, meeting in two different forms. This recognition doesn't inflate the ego. It dissolves it, because suddenly, the relationship isn't me and you anymore. It's consciousness in dialogue with itself. Your presence amplifies their presence. Their clarity deepens your clarity. Every moment of honesty becomes a reminder of what you both are. Every moment of unconsciousness becomes a gentle invitation to wake up again. You become spiritual partners, not in the sense of teaching each other, but in the sense of remembering together. When one forgets, the other remembers. When one gets lost in story, the other reflects silence. The relationship becomes a self-correcting field that naturally pulls both of you back into awareness. This is why conscious partnership is such a powerful catalyst. The ego can hide in solitude. It can build spiritual identities. It can pretend to be awakened. But in intimacy, there's nowhere to hide. Your partner feels every contraction, every story, every subtle move away from presence. And because they meet you with awareness instead of reactivity, it becomes impossible to stay asleep for long. The relationship itself becomes a teacher. Other people feel this, even if they can't articulate it. They sense the ease between you, the freedom, the lack of pressure. They notice that being around you makes their own nervous system relax. Without trying to, you emit a kind of field, a frequency of presence that helps others remember themselves too. This is the meta purpose. You're not just loving each other. You're participating in the awakening of consciousness. Your relationship becomes a small but potent node in the evolution of human connection. A demonstration of what's possible when two beings stop relating from fear and start relating from truth. Here's something most people never consider. Your relationship doesn't exist in a vacuum. It affects everyone around it. You've felt this before. You've walked into a room with a couple locked in quiet resentment. No raised voices, no obvious conflict. Yet the air feels tight, like you need to tiptoe. You've also met couples who carry a different quality, a lightness, an ease, a quiet openness that makes you feel more yourself just by being near them. That's the field effect. Two people relating from fear generate a field of tension. Two people relating from wholeness generate a field of freedom. When a relationship is conscious, others relax around you. Conversations get more honest. People feel less like they need to perform. Friends feel inspired without feeling judged. Children absorb this most powerfully. Growing up around conscious partnership teaches them that conflict doesn't equal danger. Emotions aren't threats. Connection doesn't require clinging. This imprint carries into their friendships, their adult relationships, their entire way of being. And your friends feel it too, because your field makes certain dynamics impossible to sustain. When you're anchored in presence, people instinctively drop their masks around you. They soften, they breathe, they become more real. But here's what's crucial. You don't stay in a relationship for the sake of inspiring others. The field effect is a byproduct, not a goal. The real integrity is staying aligned with what's true for you. When you do that, the uplift happens automatically because collective transformation doesn't come from effort. It comes from authenticity. Every time you choose presence over pattern, truth over protection, you're contributing to the slow but unstoppable evolution of how humans love. Your relationship becomes a small lighthouse, and as more people awaken to this kind of connection, the collective field shifts. Old relational templates lose their power. New possibilities become normal. We're at the beginning of that shift now, and simply by being awake in your own love, you become part of something much larger than your personal story. This is where everything you've heard so far points to, the deepest truth hiding in plain sight. Love is the recognition of non-separation, literally. When you see another being clearly, Not their personality, not their behaviors, not their wounds or achievements, but the awareness looking through their eyes. You're seeing the same awareness that looks through yours. One consciousness, that moment of recognition, that soft collapse of me and you, is what we call love. This is why love feels like coming home. You're returning to the truth of what you already are. The ego cannot truly love. It can desire, attach, fear, possess, but not love, because ego depends on separation, and love dissolves it. Real love happens only when the sense of being a divided self loosens. When the boundary softens, what's left is presence meeting presence, being meeting being, awareness recognizing itself. And from that recognition, everything changes. You stop looking to another person to complete you, because you see clearly that you were never separate to begin with. You can enjoy the dance of I and you, lover and beloved, giver and receiver, self and other, all while knowing, quietly, subtly, beautifully, this is all consciousness loving itself. When you understand this, you no longer chase love. You become love. This is the final revelation. There is no other. There is only this. One consciousness, one awareness, one love appearing in infinite forms. And when you recognize yourself in another, you're not falling in love with them. You're remembering yourself. Take a moment. Let everything you've heard settle, not as information, but as a feeling. Notice the awareness that's here right now. The awareness that was present before any relationship began and will be present after every relationship completes its cycle. That awareness is whole, complete, untouched by gain or loss. It doesn't need another to be fulfilled, and yet it can choose to meet another with total openness. If you share that wholeness with someone, if you meet another being from the recognition of your own completeness, something extraordinary happens. You don't search for love. You express it. You don't try to complete each other. You celebrate each other's completeness. You don't need the relationship to feel whole. You choose it from freedom, moment by moment. And in that choosing, you rediscover what's been here all along. The love that doesn't come and go. The intimacy that has no boundary. The connection that was never broken. Welcome home.